This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. So I just put myself through the horror of rewatching that game, and I did it for good reason, right? Because I wanted to take myself out of that moment of excitement that we all had for week one starting that turned into massive disappointment. And when something like that happens, right, when you're up here and you're super excited like you are in week one, and then you lay an egg like the Browns did, the reactions from that roller coaster ride of emotions can usually be a bit extreme. And some of the things that we're evaluating are very, very, very important things to this team's future for this year and going forward. And I want to make sure I make every effort to not overreact or underreact to anything I'm seeing. And in a situation like this, definitely got to rewatch it. Like, no matter how bad the game is, how much we hated it, got to rewatch it. Got to remove yourself from the emotions of the game and how you felt during the game to be able to really look at the game and evaluate it fairly. So that's what this game's going to be. I'm going to look at what I learned in the rewatch of it and also tell you what I don't think was to blame and what I do think was fairly the problem in this game. So let's get into it. There's not that many people I'm going to put on the list here that aren't to blame for what happened with the Browns versus the Cowboys. But if there is one unit that's going to get a mass exoneration here, it's the defense. The defense is free from all charges. Now, this is something, when you look at the scoreboard, you might go, what? We gave up 33 points. How can the defense be exonerated? Or even if you're remember enough to know that the Browns gave up a punt return, you're still going to say, hey, they gave up high 20s. How can they be exonerated? When it comes to true points allowed, right? Points that weren't allowed purely because of field position. The Browns only gave up 17 points. They gave up 2 touchdown drives, the 2 long drives of the game, and they gave up one 10-plus yard play on a drive that started out of their territory that ended up in a field goal. So they put the Cowboys into field goal positioning by not executing on defense. That's 17 points. I feel like the defense is responsible of the 33. The other 16 that the Cowboys scored are solely due to horrid execution on the offensive side of the ball. The Browns were 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out virtually all game. They had 14 possessions, so many 3 and outs in there. And for this defense to only give up 2 extended drives when the Cowboys had 14 drives and their offense is as high powered as they are, I feel pretty good about that. I think the defense is fine. The defense is where you want it to be. I see no reason to be concerned about the defense. By the way, shout out to Brendan Aubrey. Might be the best kicker I've ever seen in my life. There was one point in this game where he kind of just for funds made a 66-yard field goal, but it ended up being a delay of game, so it didn't count. But if it would have counted, it would have been one of the longest field goals in NFL history. Definitely the longest outdoor field. And he just kind of did it with again, that dude might be the best kicker I've ever seen, including Justin Tucker, because Justin wasn't kicking it with that much ease. Shout out to the USFL, man. But yes, not going to blame the defense first. Secondary came to play. Thought the linebackers were fine. Interior was a little bit leaky in the run game, but like they didn't get gashed when they needed to stop the run. They stopped the run. Like, this is kind of the stat of the day when it comes to like just how hard the defense hung on to this game. Like, they fought like hell to keep the Browns in this game, and they deserve no credit for how this game turned out, because In between the time from when the Browns scored their first touchdown to when Deshaun Watson threw his second interception of the day, right? So basically tracking from when the Browns had a chance to get back in this game late in the mid in the third quarter to when Deshaun Watson threw that interception that basically ended the game. From that time, the Browns defense saw 4 offensive possessions by the Dallas Cowboys. They gave up 31 yards in 2 first downs in those 4 possessions. They really took over the later half of this game. Like whatever leaks were there in those 2 drives in the first half. And like one of those drives only really happened because CeeDee Lamb made one of the more incredible catches that you're going to see. And then Juwan Thornhill fell asleep in the secondary because he was watching the Browns get in the backfield. He thought he had a tip ball interception that could have come to him or something like that, something stupid. He made a mistake there. But outside of that, which that stuff isn't really replicatable, so I'm not really worried about that. Outside of that, the Browns defense really didn't look that leaky to me. They look fine. Like if Dak Prescott weren't playing opposite of a Deshaun Watson who played worse than him in this game, we would be talking about how bad Dak Prescott played in this game. But because Deshaun Watson played significantly worse than Dak did in this game, then it doesn't become a thing for Dak Prescott. But he was bad in this game. Well, not bad. He just was limited in this game by what the Browns secondary was able to do all game. So the Browns defense, they hold no blame here. The Browns should have really only given up 17 points in this game. And the Browns should have had a chance to win this if the offense was competent. Point blank, period. You should have won this game with a competent offense, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. Not going to blame the defense. Another guy I'm not going to blame is Jerome Ford. I know Jerome Ford had a rough first couple of carries. He had that one carry where he didn't go outside and people got mad about that one. But if you look at what Jerome Ford did from the 2-minute warning of the first half to the end of the game, it was pretty impressive stuff here, despite the fact that the offensive line was a shit show all game. He had 11 carries. In those carries, he went 6 yards, 5 yards, 4 yards, 4 yards, 6 yards, 1 rush of -2 on a blown up play, and then 11 yards, 5 yards, 4 yards, 4 yards. It was an average about 4.18 a carry. I liked what I saw from Jerome. He had a little bit more wiggle side to side. I thought he found some lanes too and some runs there. I like what I saw from Jerome Ford. I'm encouraged to see more out of him. I think he's really getting comfortable and finding his own as a running back. So those are the parties I'm not going to hold responsible for this loss. So let's talk about the parties I think are most responsible. Let's get to the RICO charges. Deshaun Watson is number 1 on the indictment list. Now, he's not the only thing that went wrong or the main thing that went wrong. I think all 4 of these people that I'm going to name kind of played an equal part in what happened in this game, if I'm being honest with you. Like, again, the offense on Sunday was a crime, and if it is a crime, it's a RICO. Like, it's an organized crime. It was not just one individual acting rogue. It was a lot of things going wrong within the organization. So Deshaun Watson, the first question you have here is, hey, he's coming off a season-ending injury. Is he healthy? Was this just the injury, or was this a bad football game for Deshaun Watson? I think he was fine. I don't think he's still injured. If he is still injured, I don't care. He looked fine out there physically. He was running fine. He was cutting side to side fine. When he was running for his life, he didn't look like a guy that was injured. When he was throwing the ball and overthrowing his wide receiver, it didn't look like an arm that was injured. He made some really nice throws in this game that indicated to me that he could still drive when he wanted to. It was just a matter of him putting it together physically and mentally for him to do so. So I don't think he was injured. I didn't see an injured player out there. I saw somebody who was relatively healthy, right? He might have a nick or a bruise or a bump somewhere, but this performance was not because of injury. At the end of last season, or at least at the end of Watson's season last year, I made the point of saying that his career is at a bit of a crossroads, right? There are quarterbacks who had his play style that made the adjustments they needed to make to age gracefully, and they age gracefully. And then there are quarterbacks like Carson Wentz who had his play style and fizzled out, right? Cam Newton, another one that fizzled out, farted out of there. And kind of like once their peak was over, you never really heard from them again. This is what I mean when I say that this can go down the Carson Wentz direction. Because this is what Watson looked like. He looked like cooked Carson Wentz in this game. Kept trying to roll right. Indecisive about where he wants to throw the ball. When he throws the ball down the field, he's too juiced up. He throws the ball way, way away from where he's supposed to. He can't trust himself to fit the windows that he used to try to fit to. He's not the same. He's a good athlete still. He's a pretty damn, like, he can run well. He ran the ball well in this game, but he's not lightning quick like he used to be. So he can't just make stuff happen out of nothing. Like, it has to be there for it to happen for Deshaun Watson. He backslid into rolling right a lot in this game, and he was bailing out of pockets, and he was a million reasons why it could have happened. I know that he had a lot going on in his personal life this week, and maybe that's the reason. I'll give it till next week to really paint how I feel about Deshaun Watson going forward, because if it were stuff like, oh, he didn't play in the preseason, oh, he had a lot going on that week or whatever it was, because I know he did lose his father and a family friend. So maybe it was all of that stuff. It's not me to judge whether that stuff should affect him or not. And especially if you've never lost a parent, it really shouldn't be up to you to judge whether that's the case. But if that's the case, if that's not the case, he should play better next week, right? So if he comes out and he plays similar to this next week, I mean, the writing's on the wall at that point, right? So you're going to start to wonder, is he cooked? And then once you think he's cooked, you got to start entertaining conversations about if he should still be out there, if he's not going to be beneficial to winning. Because what I saw this game was worse than any game he put together in 2023. This was 2022 Watson bad. Like, not just 2020, like 2022 fresh off the suspension bad. Like, I haven't seen him look this uncomfortable since 2022. Now, again, maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe you're in the comment section and you don't want to hear that there was a reason for that. Maybe you're in the comment section violently arguing that there was a reason for that. We'll find out next week, right? If he just had a bad day, it will reflect in how he plays next week, because he should look nothing like this. But if he looks like this, I have to say that this now creates a pattern, right? Because it's not just one time. He's looked like this against Pittsburgh. He looked like this a couple of times in 2022. He looked like this week 1. It's 4 games. Can't ignore it, right? And every time it's happened, I thought, hey, this is going to be the last time we ever see him do this. It keeps happening. So I can't just hand wave it away anymore. I can't act like, oh, this is just an aberration. He was coming back off and he didn't play in the preseason. He's going to be fine week 2. I can't trust that, because I've thought that before and we're still doing it. So I got to see what he looks like week 2. That's really going to determine how I feel about what happened in week 1. It's really going to paint a lot of what's missing right now, because you could blame it on a bunch of other stuff, and it might be the reason. I don't know, man. What I do know is he ain't getting the benefit of the doubt right now. Like, absolutely not getting the benefit of the doubt. And it's concerning what I saw on the game film, at least on the broadcast film. I haven't been able to look at the all 22, but he was hesitant to pull the trigger all game. When he threw the ball like 30 plus yards down the field, he overthrew so much. Like, he overthrew by like a mile on each one of those throws. My personal theory on why that kept happening was something I talk about that I feel like I don't know why the people who are like so dead set to the preseason just not mattering at all for playing in don't ever acknowledge that like you have a different level of adrenaline going through your body when you're playing a football game. And you got to get comfortable with that level of adrenaline. And I'm not saying that Deshaun Watson should play like 90 snaps in the preseason, but you at least want him to get that adrenaline. There's a reason that boxers spar. Boxers spar so they can get used to being in a fight. Because you can't train on the bag and learn how to fight. You got to fight to learn how to fight. We talk about football being physical, like a fight. You're not going to learn how to play football doing 7-on-7s, maybe some 11-on-11s, while you got a non-contact jersey on. You're only going to go but so far. Especially for a dude who's been practicing more than he's been playing the last 4 years. And when I see him overthrow like that, I think to myself, oh, he's not used to throwing with that much adrenaline. He's used to being in practice and there being an element of chill there. So when he really does try to whip it, he has no control over the football because he's throwing it way harder than he ever would because he's playing with adrenaline that he's not used to. Again, if that was the case, this should not happen next week because he played more than enough to be comfortable with it. But that's what it looked like to me. And we got to stop acting like not playing in the preseason is this brilliant strategy that has like gobs of evidence that it works. And I understand that not everybody plays in the preseason. So it's not like a guaranteed fix-all solution that some people paint it to be. But a lot of teams play a little bit in the preseason, especially their quarterbacks. I don't think that's a mistake. Like Pat Mahomes plays in the preseason. Andy Reid plays his starters in the preseason. There's got to be a reason for that other than tradition. And I think there is. Let me add a bit of context to this rant. When I say you need to play in the preseason, it's really about the context of what your situation is. If you're like the Browns defense and you got Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward and all these guys together who have hundreds upon hundreds and thousands upon thousands of snaps together, then yeah, I don't think you need to play in the preseason. And I think the defense was fine. They didn't play in the preseason. They were fine. They didn't need to play in the preseason. They were going to year 2 of a defensive system. But when you have an offense that's still being put together, new wide receivers being added to it, new offensive linemen being added to it or incorporated, you got new offensive line coach, new running back coach, new offensive coordinator, new offense that you're running, and you're in that kind of a situation, you do need to make more of an effort to play your starters in the preseason. Now, I understand they couldn't play all their starters because the Browns just had injury issues point blank during training camp. They're still recovering from some of the injuries they had last year. They're still recovering from injuries that they got in mini camp. I get that, but they could have made more of an effort. There's no reason we saw Jameis Winston for like 3 drives in the preseason. There's no reason that we saw like Jerome Ford for like 2 drives during the preseason. Like we should have saw some of the starters who could play way more frequently than we did in this preseason. And I think that had an effect. I understand the fear of not wanting to get your players injured before the season starts because nothing sucks more than a big preseason injury. But you can't live in your fears and prepare for a football season. And at some point, you have to ask yourself this question. Was it worth it for the Browns to be 100% healthy? Was it worth it? They were 100% healthy walking into this game, or at least as healthy as they were going to be, right? They had no preseason injuries. 100% healthy coming into it. And they didn't look prepared. Did it make a difference? I think it would have made more of a difference if they were a little bit more prepared. It's always going to be up there. And look, I'm not saying preseason and playing in the preseason is the only reason they didn't win this game. That there was much more than that going on, but it definitely played a factor in my mind. Like, I think this game would have looked a little different if you would have played a couple of drives in the preseason. It does matter. I'm tired of hearing it doesn't matter. Oh, it's just 10 snaps and it's not going to change. It's hard to believe it. Which it would, because you got to get these dudes used to playing football again. Not football at practice, football in the game. You got to have them be used to it. Because if you don't, you get a team that you saw this week that look like they practice. And that's exactly why Kevin Stefanski and Ken Dorsey are getting this indictment too. Bad game from those two. Don't love the game plan. I thought it was very, very lacking in creativity. I've seen Kevin draw up stuff when he's worried about his left tackle. I've seen Kevin draw up stuff when he's worried about the ability for his offense to go downfield. I've seen Kevin draw stuff up when he's worried about his offense's ability to execute. And it's always been better than what it was this week. He's capable of doing it. I've seen Ken do it too. Ken's capable of doing it. But they did not do that in this game. The game plan for this week, the stuff that they drew up short, it was not good. It was not creative. It was very predictable. It got them behind the sticks a lot when it wasn't penalties getting them behind the sticks. And somebody got to be to blame for all the penalties that the Browns had in this game. You know how ridiculous the penalties were in this game? Like, I think we got an idea for it, but we don't really understand the scope of how awful the penalties were in this game. I mentioned earlier, the Browns had 14 offensive possessions in this game. Of those 14 drives in this game, 8 of those drives got behind the sticks at some point. And remember, the Browns went 3 and out most of the time, if not like 80% of the time in this game. So going behind the sticks, like, they didn't really redeem it much in this game. I think they redeemed one behind the sticks situation in this game. They went behind the sticks 8 times in those 14 drives. 7 of those 8 drives where they went behind the sticks were because of penalties. James Hudson on the first drive, ineligible receiver downfield. DeJuan Jones, false start. Turns a 4th and 2, I believe, into a 4th and 7, puts you behind the sticks for that situation. You got to punt. David Njoku holds on a successful run for Jerome Ford. DeJuan Jones, again, illegal formation. You get a sack and then you get an illegal formation on the next drive. They end up taking the sack. But if they didn't take the sack, they would have got the illegal formation. You had an illegal shift by Amari Cooper, and then you had another illegal shift. Somebody got to be to blame. That feels like the offensive coordinator job. That feels like the head coach, who is a offensive coordinator's job too. Like, who am I supposed to blame there? The refs? Like, were the refs illegally calling these penalties? No, man. They were calling what was there. This can't happen. Can't happen. Not going to win a football game when you keep putting yourself behind the sticks. When you shoot yourself in the foot 7 times. 7 times in this game. Another thing that went wrong in this game that unfortunately I got to indict him for, DeJuan Jones, brother, you got to take the stand. Awful game by DeJuan Jones. And you're lucky everybody is mad at Deshaun Watson. You're lucky he stunk the joint up. Because if Deshaun did not stink the joint up, you would be getting a lot of scrutiny. Bad game. Had a lot of penalties. We just talked about it. Put the Browns behind the sticks. And from what I can tell from the broadcast view, gave up at least 2.5 sacks. Not good. Not good at all. Not loving that. And he had a bit of a shaky first preseason game. The last preseason game he played, and he was fine. I want to see it from DeJuan Jones. People talk about letting him play left tackle. He got to play right tackle first. He got to get good at right tackle before he could play left tackle. This is exactly why. He was bad. And he was probably going to be, he's probably going to end up being the worst graded offensive lineman on the team for this week, because it was not good for DeJuan in this one. So those are the people I think to blame: Deshaun, DeJuan, Kevin, and Ken. I think those are the most egregious. Yes, Elijah Moore could have caught a pass that was low, but Deshaun had no reason to throw that ball that low. The pocket was clean. He threw that low. Really shouldn't have happened. Elijah Moore could have caught a pass that hit the tippy top of his hands and turned into an interception. He could have. Deshaun Watson, though, has this habit that I've evaluated with him of when he does throw that out on stick, he gets lazy with it. And it's turned into like 2 pick sixes and another interception today. At some point, he's just got to not be lazy on that throw. He doesn't throw a good ball. The ball was ducked up. It went up in the air. And yeah, Elijah Moore didn't catch it. He did not make the play for his wide receiver, for his quarterback. That is true. But the quarterback got to make things a little bit easier than that, man. Especially when he's supposed to be the guy. The other interception, the tip ball interception off Micah Parsons, I can't excuse that as a tip ball interception. It's not Deshaun Watson's fault. He threw it right to Micah Parsons' face. Micah Parsons was basically saying hi to him. I'm going to block this. And he decided, nah, I'm going to beat you to it. And then Micah just so easily timed it up and blocked it, which is also another concern. Like, is his mechanics elongated? Why was it so easy for Micah to just bat it down? But I guess when you just stare at Micah and throw the ball at him, he's going to be able to block it. So the Watson gets no pass for this game. Don't make it just because I'm saying other people sucked in this game. Does not give Watson a pass for this game. Does not give DeJuan a pass for this game. Does not give Kevin or Ken. I'm not running Bell for any of those guys. They're all charged with the RICO case. So what's my takeaway after watching this game? Do I feel as bad about this game that I felt right after it ended? In some ways, I still don't feel better about what I saw. In some ways, I see the bigger picture. I think the Browns are still going to be a team that's going to be able to win games, right? I think they're going to probably put up a much better showing against Jacksonville. I think that defense is really good still, top of the NFL quality good. I think they just kind of got the raw end of the stick by their offense in this one. And I think that will show itself throughout the course of the season. We know that this defense is going to be good enough to carry the Browns to a certain degree. I wonder if the Browns adjust next week to run the ball more, because I saw some promising stuff in how they were running the ball in the second half of this game, especially with Jerome Ford, that encourages me about it going forward. And if we aren't going to be sure about Deshaun Watson, then we need to be sure about this run game, Nick Chubb or no Nick Chubb, because a strong run game without Nick Chubb for 4 weeks is going to be a great run game with Nick Chubb for 12 weeks or 13 weeks, or how many weeks that Nick Chubb plays. As far as Deshaun Watson goes, we got to figure out whether this was just a bad game like he's had before, or if this is just a bigger sign of a bigger pattern that exists. And I think we'll have a much clearer picture of what to think about what happened in week 1 next week when we see him play again, right? Was it just that he hadn't played football in a while? Was it just that he had a lot of distractions in his personal life this week with his father passing and his childhood teammate passing and all of that? Like, was it just too much going on this week with all the national attention and it all kind of just exploded on him, which is somewhat understandable. If it was all of that, right, those factors, if they played a heavy role in how Deshaun Watson looked today, plus the offensive line not playing well, and then going up against Micah Parsons, if that was the reason Deshaun Watson looked like this, like a lot of people who still are rooting for Deshaun Watson to work in Cleveland may argue was the reason that Deshaun Watson looked like this, then it should look a lot better next week, right? I think that's a fair assessment. It's the fairest assessment you're probably going to hear about this, because I don't think a lot of people are even willing to give Deshaun Watson that. And I'm not even giving him that much, but I don't think that a lot of people are going to be willing to give him even that. So that's really what it comes down to for Watson. Like, he's got to look significantly improved next week. If he doesn't, then this looks like a giant pattern that says cooked on it, right? And I've been somebody who's been more optimistic about what Watson has put together in 2023 because what I saw gave me cause to be optimistic. But what I saw in this game did not remind me of what he was doing, especially at the tail end of his 2023 run, which is concerning to me, right? Again, it might just be the case that the last football game he played was in December of 2023, and he didn't play in any preseason games, and he felt the brunt of that in this game. Maybe that's the case. We're all tired of that being the case for Deshaun Watson, to be clear, right? Nobody's happy that that could be the case, but that's something you can get over after a game and get on with the rest of your season with. But if it's something deeper than that, if it's that he can't catch up mentally to the speed of the game, is it that physically he can't keep up with how he used to play or how he instinctively wants to play? So those habits that weren't that bad when he was 23 now are awful when he's 28, because he just can't athletically live like that anymore, or durability wise live like that anymore. He needs to be more disciplined in that pocket. I thought he made some progress in that in 2023, but he backslid and is running right in this game. Gotta see it more, right? So how he looks next week will really, really paint the picture about how I feel about what happened in this game. So lots riding on next week. They had a lot to clean up. It's clean up a bowl. Like, I have no doubt that this team can clean it up and beat the Jacksonville Jaguars. No doubt in my mind. But am I going to just assume that they're going to do that? Am I going to hand wave this off and say, oh, yeah, nothing to worry about? They're going to be able to do that. Don't you worry. We're going to laugh at these losers who think the Browns stink now. No, I'm not doing that. Because I saw enough to be a little concerned. And I think everybody should be at least a little concerned. Not full-blown panic, but concerned. We'll see what happens next week. Hopefully, it's less concerning. Hopefully, it's encouraging. Because, again, if the issues with the offense are what a lot of people want to say, which is, hey, they didn't play a lot in the preseason. They looked rusty. They didn't look ready. They should be a tremendous difference from week 1 to week 2. And if there is a tremendous difference, I don't want to hear about how the preseason, playing in the preseason don't matter anymore. I really don't. But that'd be the case. So that's where I'm at. I want to move on to Jacksonville, and I want to see what they do and how they respond in Jacksonville, especially DeJuan Jones, especially Deshaun Watson, especially Kevin Stefanski, and especially Ken Dorsey. I should see some massive improvement next week from those 4. They better improve. That's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.